Your bank account doesn't lie, or does it? What if poverty is just a story you keep telling yourself? Millionaires share one invisible skill. They assume wealth before it arrives. You've been taught to see it to believe it. They believe it to see it. The gap between you and financial freedom? Not money, not luck. One assumption. This audiobook proves belief alone rewrites your economic reality. By the end, you'll hold a new conviction. Wealth is permission you grant yourself. Let me ask you something right now, before we go any further. When you checked your bank balance this morning, or yesterday, or whenever you last looked, what was the first thought that crossed your mind? Was it relief? Was it panic? Was it that familiar sinking feeling? That quiet voice whispering you'll never have enough? Most people think that voice is telling the truth. Most people think their financial reality is fixed, determined by circumstances beyond their control. What if I told you that voice is a liar? What if the story you've been telling yourself about money is the only thing standing between you and the wealth you deserve? This isn't a book about budgeting. It's not about side hustles or investment strategies or cutting back on lattes. This is about something far more fundamental, far more powerful. This is about the invisible force that determines whether money flows toward you or away from you. This is about assumption, and assumption, as you're about to discover, is the most underestimated power you possess. Think about the wealthiest person you know personally. Not a celebrity, not someone you've read about, but someone in your actual life. Maybe it's a colleague who somehow always lands the promotions. Maybe it's a friend who seems to stumble into opportunities without trying. Maybe it's a family member who built something from nothing. Now think about how they carry themselves. Think about how they talk about money. Think about the energy they bring into a room. There's something different about them, isn't there? Something you can't quite name. They don't seem stressed about money the way others do. They don't obsess over every dollar. They move through the world with a certainty, an ease, as if wealth is simply their natural state. That certainty isn't arrogance. It's not luck. It's not even privilege, though privilege can certainly make it easier. That certainty is an assumption so deeply embedded in their identity that they don't even recognize it as a choice. They assume they will be fine. They assume opportunities will appear. They assume they are the kind of person money comes to. And because they assume it, they act in ways that make it true. They take risks others avoid. They ask for raises others think they don't deserve. They start businesses others call foolish. They do all of this not because they're braver or smarter, but because their assumption about themselves and money makes these actions feel natural, even obvious. You have assumptions too. Right now, in this moment, you're operating from a set of beliefs about money that you probably didn't consciously choose. Maybe you assume that wealth is for other people. Maybe you assume you're not good with money. Maybe you assume that wanting wealth makes you greedy or shallow. Maybe you assume that no matter how hard you work, you'll always be one emergency away from financial disaster. These assumptions feel like facts. They feel like the truth about who you are. But they're not facts. They're just stories. And stories can be rewritten. Over the next several hours, you and I are going on a journey together. We're going to dismantle the assumptions that have kept you stuck. We're going to examine where they came from, why they feel so real, and how they've been running your financial life from the shadows. Then we're going to build something new. We're going to construct a new set of assumptions that align with the wealth and abundance you want. And we're going to embed these assumptions so deeply into your identity that they become automatic, effortless, true. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't manifesting in the vague, wishful sense. This is about understanding how your brain works, how identity shapes behavior, and how behavior creates results. This is about recognizing that you've been living inside a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you're about to write a new one. By the time we're done, you won't just believe differently about money. You'll be different, and that difference will change everything. So let's begin. Let's start with the truth you've been avoiding. Let's look directly at what you actually believe about money right now, in this moment, without the pretty lies we tell ourselves to feel better. Because until you see the beliefs that are running your life, you can't change them. And until you change them, nothing else changes. The first thing you need to understand is that your beliefs about money aren't abstract philosophical ideas floating in your head. They're active, living forces shaping every financial decision you make. They're the reason you didn't ask for that raise. They're the reason you didn't start that business. They're the reason you spend money you don't have or hoard money you do. Your beliefs are the invisible hand guiding your wallet, and most of the time, you don't even notice they're there. Let me give you an example. A woman named Sarah sat across from me in a coffee shop 2 years ago. She was bright, talented, hardworking, everything you'd expect from someone who should be doing well financially. But she was drowning in debt. She worked 60 hours a week and had nothing to show for it. When I asked her what she believed about money, she looked at me like I'd asked her to solve a calculus problem. She didn't know, so I asked her different questions. I asked her what her parents used to say about rich people. Her face changed immediately. They used to say rich people were selfish. They used to say money changed people for the worse. They used to say it was easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to get into heaven. Sarah laughed when she remembered this, but the laugh was sad. She realized in that moment that she'd been subconsciously sabotaging her own success for decades because deep down, she didn't want to become the kind of person her parents had taught her to despise. That's an assumption. A powerful, invisible assumption that shaped Sarah's entire financial reality without her conscious awareness. And here's the thing, Sarah isn't unique. You have assumptions just like this, maybe not the same ones, but equally powerful. And until you surface them, until you drag them into the light and examine them, they will continue to run your life. So let's do that right now. Let's do an audit. I want you to think about the last month. Think about the things you've said out loud or thought privately about money. Things like, I can't afford that. Things like, money doesn't grow on trees. Things like, I'm so bad with money. Things like, I'll never be able to retire. Things like, rich people are lucky. Think about these statements. Write them down if you can. Mentally catalog them if you can't. Don't judge them. Don't try to fix them yet. Just notice them. Notice how many of these statements are rooted in scarcity, in lack, in the belief that there isn't enough and there never will be. Now here's what I want you to understand. Every single one of those statements is an assumption, not a fact. An assumption. And assumptions can be changed. But first, you have to see them clearly. You have to recognize that they're not the truth about reality. They're just the truth about what you currently believe. And belief is flexible. Belief is malleable. Belief is the material we're going to reshape. Let me tell you about another person. A man named David. David grew up poor. Not just broke, but genuinely poor. Food insecurity, evictions, the whole painful package. By the time he was an adult, he'd built an entire identity around being the kid who had nothing. Even after he got a decent job, even after he started making okay money, he still saw himself as poor. He still acted poor. He bought the cheapest version of everything. He never treated himself. He felt guilty spending money on anything that wasn't strictly necessary. His friends would invite him to dinners or trips and he'd decline, telling himself he couldn't afford it even when he could. David's bank account had changed, but his identity hadn't. He was still operating from the assumption that he was broke. And that assumption kept him living like he was broke even when he wasn't. This is what I call the wealth identity gap. It's the distance between who you actually are and who you believe you are when it comes to money. And this gap is the single biggest obstacle between you and financial abundance. Because here's the truth. You cannot consistently earn, keep, or grow wealth that contradicts your self-image. Your identity is the thermostat that regulates your financial temperature. If you see yourself as someone who struggles with money, you will find ways to struggle with money no matter how much you earn. If you see yourself as someone who is always broke, you will find ways to be broke no matter how many raises you get. Your external circumstances will always trend toward alignment with your internal identity. Think about lottery winners for a moment. We've all heard the statistics. The vast majority of lottery winners end up broke within a few years. Why? Because winning the lottery changed their bank account but didn't change their identity. They didn't see themselves as wealthy people. They saw themselves as poor people who got lucky. And because their identity didn't match their new reality, their subconscious mind worked overtime to bring reality back in line with identity. They spent recklessly, made terrible investments, got taken. Let me take you inside the brain for a moment. Neuroscience has shown us something remarkable about belief. When you believe something, truly believe it, your brain doesn't distinguish between that belief and objective reality. Your brain treats your beliefs as facts about the world, and it organizes all of your perceptions, decisions, and behaviors to align with those facts. This is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When you believe you're bad with money, your brain highlights every piece of evidence that confirms that belief and ignores evidence that contradicts it. You remember the time you overdrafted your account, but forget the months you stayed on budget. You notice when you make a poor financial decision but don't give yourself credit for good ones, your brain is literally working against you, trying to prove that your belief about yourself is correct. But here's the beautiful part. This same mechanism works in reverse. When you genuinely believe you're good with money, your brain starts looking for evidence to support that belief. You notice opportunities you would have missed before. You make decisions that align with wealth. You carry yourself with a confidence that attracts better financial outcomes. Your brain becomes your ally instead of your enemy. This is why assumption is so powerful. It's not magic. It's neurology. When you assume you're wealthy or becoming wealthy, your brain reorganizes reality to match that assumption. This brings us to what I call the conviction blueprint, the pathway from assumption to reality, and it works in 4 stages. First, assumption shapes attention. What you believe determines what you notice. Second, attention shapes interpretation. What you notice determines how you understand what's happening around you. Third, interpretation shapes action. How you understand things determines what you do about them. And fourth, action shapes results. What you do determines what happens. So the chain looks like this. Assumption to attention to interpretation to action to results. And then those results feed back into your assumption, either strengthening it or weakening it. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine 2 people, both stuck in low-paying jobs, both wanting to earn more. One person assumes they'll never make more than they make now. This assumption directs their attention toward evidence of limitation. They notice every time someone gets passed over for promotion. They interpret job postings as requiring qualifications they don't have. This interpretation leads to inaction. They don't apply. They don't ask. They don't take risks. And this inaction produces the result they expected. They stay stuck. This result confirms their original assumption, making it stronger. Now imagine the second person. Same job, same circumstances, but different assumption. This person assumes they will find a way to earn more. This assumption directs their attention toward possibility. They notice when colleagues get promoted and they study what those colleagues did. They interpret job postings as opportunities to learn what skills are valued. This interpretation leads to action. They take courses. They network. They apply to stretch positions. And some of these actions produce results. Maybe not immediately, maybe not perfectly, but eventually something works. They get a raise or a new job or a side income stream. And this result confirms their original assumption, making it stronger. Same starting point. Different assumptions, completely different trajectories. This is the power of conviction. This is why belief alone can shape wealth. Not because belief is magical, but because belief determines behavior, and behavior determines outcomes, and outcomes reinforce belief. It's a loop. And the question is, what loop are you in? Are you in a scarcity loop, where lack confirms lack? Or are you in an abundance loop, where belief in possibility creates possibility? Most people are stuck in the scarcity loop without realizing it. They think they're being realistic. They think they're protecting themselves from disappointment. But what they're actually doing is guaranteeing the disappointment they're trying to avoid. They assume things won't work out, so they don't fully commit. So things don't work out, so their assumption is confirmed. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy dressed up as realism. Breaking this loop requires something uncomfortable. It requires you to adopt a new assumption before you have evidence that the assumption is true. It requires you to believe in your financial success before that success has arrived. This feels risky. It feels foolish. It feels like lying to yourself. But it's not. It's choosing a different story. A story that serves you better. A story that opens doors instead of closing them. And the truth is, your current story isn't more true just because you've believed it longer. It's just more familiar. So how do you actually do this? How do you adopt a new assumption when everything in your current reality seems to contradict it? This is where we get practical. This is where the transformation begins, and it starts with permission. You have to give yourself permission to believe something different. You have to give yourself permission to want wealth without guilt or shame. You have to give yourself permission to see yourself as someone who deserves financial abundance. This sounds simple, but for most people it's the hardest part. Because we carry so much baggage around money. We carry our parents' fears. We carry our culture's judgments. We carry our own past failures. And all of this baggage tells us we don't deserve better, that we should stay in our lane, that wanting more is greedy or unrealistic or arrogant. But here's what I need you to understand. There is nothing noble about financial struggle. There is nothing virtuous about staying small. You are not helping anyone by keeping yourself broke. In fact, the wealthier you become, the more capacity you have to help others, to contribute to causes you care about, to live a life that inspires the people around you. Wealth is not the enemy. Wealth is a tool, and like any tool, it amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, wealth makes you more generous. If you're kind, wealth gives you more capacity for kindness. The problem is never wealth itself. The problem is the stories we tell ourselves about wealth. So let's rewrite the story. Let's start by identifying the scarcity narratives you inherited. These are the money beliefs you absorbed from your family, your community, your early experiences. And I want you to be honest about this. This isn't about blaming anyone. Your parents did the best they could with what they knew. But that doesn't mean you have to carry their limitations forward. Think about what you heard about money growing up. Think about what you saw. Did you hear that money doesn't grow on trees? That rich people are greedy? That you have to work hard for every dollar? That there's never enough? These aren't universal truths. They're just beliefs. And beliefs that were true for the people who taught them to you don't have to be true for you. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with a man named Michael. Michael was in his 40s, successful by most measures, but deeply unsatisfied. He made good money, but never felt like he had enough. He was always anxious, always afraid that everything would fall apart. When we dug into his history, we discovered that his father had lost everything in a business failure when Michael was 12. The family went from comfortable to struggling overnight. Michael watched his father fall into depression. He watched his mother take on extra jobs. He watched his whole world become defined by lack. And in that moment, 12-year-old Michael made a decision. He decided that wealth was unstable, that security was an illusion, that no matter how much you had, it could all disappear. That decision became his operating assumption. And even though adult Michael had built a successful career, even though he had savings and investments and stability, he couldn't shake the anxiety that it would all vanish. Because the assumption was still there, still running his emotional life, still keeping him locked in fear. When Michael realized this, when he saw that he was living from a decision made by a scared 12-year-old, something shifted. He understood that he didn't have to keep that assumption. He could choose a new one. He could decide that wealth could be stable, that he was capable of protecting what he built, that abundance was sustainable. This didn't happen overnight, but over time, as Michael practiced his new assumption, his anxiety decreased. His relationship with money changed. He started enjoying his success instead of fearing its loss. The money didn't change. His assumption about the money changed, and that changed everything. This is the work we're doing together. We're finding the old assumptions, the inherited beliefs, the outdated stories, and we're choosing new ones. We're authoring a new prosperity identity from scratch. And the first step is getting clear on what you actually want that identity to be. Not what you think you should want. Not what would impress other people. What do you actually want? How much money would make you feel secure? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? What would financial freedom actually look like for you? Get specific. Get honest. Because vague goals produce vague results. Clarity is power. Once you have clarity on the destination, we need to work backward. We need to identify the assumptions that someone who already has what you want would hold. What does someone with financial security believe about money? What does someone living your ideal lifestyle believe about themselves? What does someone with financial freedom believe about opportunity? These aren't hypothetical questions. There are real people living the reality you want, and they got there by holding certain assumptions about themselves and money. Your job is to identify those assumptions and adopt them as your own. This might feel like pretending. It might feel like you're faking it until you make it. And in a sense you are. But here's the key. You're not being dishonest. You're being intentional. You're choosing your beliefs instead of letting your beliefs be chosen for you by circumstance or history. This is maturity. This is agency. This is taking full responsibility for your inner world so that your outer world can change. Now I want to pause here and do something with you. I want to guide you through a brief grounding exercise because what we're talking about can feel overwhelming. You're confronting beliefs you've held for years, maybe decades. You're being asked to see yourself differently. This is significant work, and your nervous system needs support to process it. So wherever you are right now, whether you're walking or driving or sitting, I want you to bring your attention to your breath. Just notice it. Don't change it yet. Just observe. Notice the sensation of air moving in through your nose or mouth. Notice the rise and fall of your chest or belly. Notice the pause between the inhale and the exhale. Now I want you to slow it down slightly. Breathe in for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4. Breathe out for a count of 6. Hold for a count of 2. Do this 3 times. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6, hold for 2. Again. One more time. Good. Now just return to normal breathing. Notice how you feel. A little calmer maybe, a little more centered. This is your reminder that you can always come back to your breath. You can always ground yourself when things feel too big. All right, let's continue. We've talked about identifying your assumptions and choosing new ones. Now we need to talk about embodiment. Because here's where most people fail. They intellectually understand that they need to believe differently, but they don't embody the new belief. They say affirmations but don't act on them. They visualize success but don't change their behavior. And the problem is, belief without embodiment is just wishful thinking. Real transformation requires you to act as if the new assumption is already true. This is what I call the as-if principle. You act as if you're already the person who has what you want. Not in foolish ways. You don't go out and spend money you don't have. You don't quit your job before you have a plan. But in the small daily decisions that reveal who you believe you are, you start choosing differently. You carry yourself differently. You speak about money differently. You make decisions from a place of abundance instead of scarcity. Let me give you examples. Someone stuck in scarcity thinking walks into a store and immediately gravitates toward the clearance rack. Someone embodying abundance walks in and asks themselves what they actually want, then decides if it's worth the investment. The scarcity person buys cheap things they don't really like because they're afraid to spend money. The abundance person invests in quality things they love because they trust there will always be more money. Do you see the difference? It's not about the amount spent. It's about the energy behind the decision. It's about whether you're operating from lack or from trust. Someone stuck in scarcity thinking gets invited to a networking event and talks themselves out of going because it costs money or time. Someone embodying abundance sees the event as an investment in relationships that could lead to opportunities. The scarcity person protects what they have. The abundance person invests in expansion. Again, it's not about being reckless. It's about being strategic from a place of confidence instead of fear. Someone stuck in scarcity thinking gets a bonus or a tax refund and immediately puts it all toward debt or saves it obsessively, never allowing themselves to enjoy any of it. Someone embodying abundance creates a balanced plan, some to debt, some to savings, some to investments, and yes, some to enjoyment. Because the abundance person understands that wealth isn't just about accumulation, it's about flow. It's about creating a healthy relationship with money where it can come and go without triggering panic. These might seem like small distinctions, but they add up. Every decision you make either reinforces your old assumption or builds your new one. Every time you choose from abundance instead of scarcity, you're strengthening the neural pathway that says you're a person who has enough, who is enough, who will always be enough. And over time, these small choices compound into a completely different financial reality. But let's be honest, this is hard. Because the world around you hasn't changed yet. You're acting as if you're abundant, but your bank account might still be telling a different story. You're carrying yourself with confidence, but you're still in the same job, the same house, the same circumstances. This is the gap. The space between the assumption you're building and the reality you're still living in. And this gap is where most people give up. They decide it's not working. They decide they were fooling themselves. They retreat back into the safety of their old assumptions. And the cycle continues. So let me tell you what's actually happening during this gap. You're planting seeds. You're laying groundwork. You're sending signals to your brain and to the world that something has changed. And at first, nothing seems to happen. But beneath the surface, everything is happening. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters what you pay attention to, is recalibrating. It's starting to notice opportunities you would have missed before. Your behavior is shifting in tiny ways that accumulate over time. The questions you ask are different. The risks you're willing to take are different. The way you present yourself is different. And all of these micro shifts are creating macro changes that you won't see immediately, but will absolutely see eventually. Think about planting a tree. You put a seed in the ground, you water it, and then nothing happens. Days pass, weeks pass. It looks like you're wasting your time, but underground roots are forming. The seed is germinating. Growth is happening that you can't see. And then one day, a shoot breaks through the soil. And once it does, the growth accelerates. The tree that took weeks to sprout suddenly grows inches per day. This is exactly how assumption work functions. The early phase feels like nothing is happening. But if you stay consistent, if you keep watering the seed of your new assumption, eventually it breaks through. And when it does, the results come faster than you imagined possible. This is why expectation is so critical. Expectation is the bridge between assumption and reality. When you genuinely expect wealth to come, When you live in a state of confident anticipation, you create a magnetic pull. You start showing up differently. You start speaking up in meetings. You start pitching ideas. You start asking for what you want. You start saying yes to opportunities that scare you. And all of this activity increases the probability that something will break in your favor. Not because the universe is rewarding your positive thinking, but because you're taking more shots. You're putting yourself in more rooms. You're creating more surface area for luck to land on. Let me tell you a story. A woman named Jennifer wanted to leave her corporate job and start a consulting business. She had the skills, the experience, the network. But she was terrified. What if no one hired her? What if she couldn't replace her salary? What if she failed publicly and had to go back to corporate with her tail between her legs? These fears kept her stuck for 2 years. She kept preparing, kept planning, kept waiting for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment never came. Finally, she worked with a coach who asked her one question. What would you do if you knew it would work? Jennifer paused. The question shifted something. She realized she'd been operating from the assumption of failure. She'd been protecting herself from a disaster that hadn't happened and probably never would. So she tried something different. She started acting as if success was inevitable. She announced her business on LinkedIn. She reached out to former colleagues. She set her rates at what she actually wanted to make, not what she thought people would pay. And something remarkable happened. Within 2 weeks, she had 3 clients. Within 2 months, she'd replaced her salary. Within 6 months, she was making more than she ever had in corporate. The skills hadn't changed. The market hadn't changed. Her assumption had changed. And that assumption shifted her behavior, which shifted her results. This is what I mean by the expectation engine. When you expect success, you act like someone who expects success. And when you act like someone who expects success, you get results that confirm your expectation. It's a virtuous cycle, but it starts with the expectation. It starts with the willingness to believe before you have proof. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like toxic positivity. This sounds like I'm telling you to ignore reality and just think happy thoughts. Let me be very clear. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to ignore obstacles or challenges or setbacks. This is the difference between resilient belief and fragile belief. Fragile belief requires everything to go perfectly. One setback and it shatters. Resilient belief expects challenges and incorporates them into the journey. Resilient belief says, this didn't work, so I'll try something else. Fragile belief says, this didn't work, so I must not be cut out for this. Do you see the difference? Same obstacle, completely different interpretation. And the interpretation determines whether you keep going or give up. Building resilient belief requires practice. It requires you to catch yourself when you start spiraling into catastrophic thinking. It requires you to question the stories you tell yourself about what setbacks mean. Let me give you a practical framework for this. When something goes wrong financially, when you experience a setback, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what actually happened? Just the facts, no interpretation yet. Second, what's the worst-case scenario if this continues? Third, what's the most likely scenario? What usually happens in situations like this? Almost always, you'll find that the worst-case scenario is wildly improbable and the most likely scenario is manageable. This simple exercise can break the panic spiral and return you to rational thinking. And from rational thinking, you can take effective action. Let me share another scenario with you. Picture 2 people who both get laid off from their jobs on the same day. They're in the same industry, similar skill sets, similar savings. One person goes home and falls apart. They see the layoff as proof that they're not good enough, that the world is unsafe, that they'll never get ahead. They spend weeks in paralysis, sending out resumes half-heartedly, convinced nothing will work. The other person goes home and, yes, feels the shock and disappointment. But after processing the initial emotion, they shift into problem-solving mode. They update their resume and LinkedIn. They reach out to their network. They explore industries they'd been curious about. They treat the layoff as an opportunity to reset, to find something better. 3 months later, the first person is still unemployed, bitter, more convinced than ever that the world is against them. The second person has 2 job offers, one of which pays more than the job they lost. Same starting point. Different assumptions about what the layoff meant. Different actions. Different outcomes. This is rejection-proof belief. It's the ability to face setbacks without letting them change your core assumption about your trajectory. And it's not about being delusional. It's about being strategic with your focus. Yes, acknowledge what went wrong. Yes, Feel the disappointment. But then ask, what's the next move? What can I learn? How can I adapt? This orientation toward growth instead of defeat is what separates people who build wealth from people who stay stuck. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. The compound effect of small assumption shifts. We tend to think that big changes require big actions. That if you want to be wealthy, you need to make some massive career move or investment. But the truth is, wealth is built in the margins. It's built in the small daily decisions that seem insignificant in the moment but compound over time. And these decisions flow from your assumptions. Think about someone who assumes they're terrible with money. They don't track their spending because what's the point? They'll just mess it up anyway. They don't negotiate their salary because they assume they're not worth more. They don't invest because they assume they'll make bad choices. Each of these small non-actions seems minor, but over a year, 5 years, 10 years, they add up to an enormous opportunity cost. Now think about someone who assumes they're good with money. They check their accounts regularly because they're curious and want to stay informed. They research salary ranges and ask for raises because they assume their work has value. They start investing small amounts because they assume they'll learn and improve over time. Each of these actions also seems minor, but compounded over time, they create a completely different financial trajectory. This is what I mean by the 1% shift. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. You just need to upgrade one assumption at a time. Maybe this week you stop saying I can't afford that and start saying that's not a priority for me right now. It's a subtle language shift, but it moves you from powerless to empowered. Maybe next week you stop avoiding your bank account and start checking it daily, not from fear, but from curiosity. Maybe the week after that, you have one conversation you've been avoiding, a conversation about money, a conversation about a raise or an opportunity. These small shifts compound. They build momentum, and momentum is everything. I want to tell you about a study I came across years ago that changed how I think about behavior change. Researchers looked at people who successfully transformed their health, their finances, their relationships, basically any major life area. And they found something fascinating. The people who succeeded didn't rely on willpower or massive motivation. They relied on tiny changes that eventually snowballed. They started with something so small it felt almost pointless. One push-up, $1 saved, one difficult conversation. But they did it consistently, and over time that tiny change created a new identity. The person who does one push-up becomes someone who exercises. The person who saves $1 becomes someone who saves. And once the identity shifts, the behavior becomes easier. Eventually it becomes automatic. This is exactly how you transform your financial assumptions. You start with one small upgrade, one new thought pattern, one different behavior, and you practice it until it becomes part of who you are. Then you add another, and 6 months from now, a year from now, you look back and realize you're a completely different person. Not because you forced yourself through some grueling transformation, but because you upgraded 1% at a time. So what does this look like practically? Let me give you a detailed 30-day framework. This is your assumption reset protocol. For the next 30 days, you're going to commit to a specific set of micro-challenges that will rewire your relationship with money from the ground up. These aren't massive overhauls. They're small, doable actions that signal to your subconscious that you're serious about this transformation. Day 1. Morning Assumption Declaration. Before you do anything else, before you check your phone, before you start your day, you say out loud, "Today I assume money flows to me easily." Say it 3 times. Feel how weird it sounds. Notice the resistance. Do it anyway. Day 2. Language audit. Today, every time you're about to say, "I can't afford that," pause. Replace it with, "That's not a priority right now," or "I'm choosing to spend my money elsewhere." Do this every single time. The goal is to shift from powerless to empowered language. Day 3. Financial visibility. Log into your bank account. Look at your balance. Don't judge it. Don't spiral. Just observe. Say out loud, "This is where I am right now, and I'm moving toward where I want to be." Close the app. You're building the muscle of looking at money without fear. Day 4. Value inventory. Write down 5 ways you've created value in the past week. At work, at home, in relationships, anywhere. You're training your brain to see yourself as someone who creates value. Because value creation is how wealth flows. Day 5. Micro-investment day. Put $1, $5, whatever tiny amount, into a savings or investment account you don't touch. The amount doesn't matter. What matters is you're becoming someone who invests, someone who thinks about future wealth. Day 6. Confidence posture. 3 times today, when you're alone, stand in a power pose for 2 minutes. Hands on hips, chest open, chin up. This is embodiment work. You're teaching your body what confidence feels like. Wealthy people carry themselves differently. Practice that physicality. Day 7. Reflection checkpoint. Journal on this question. What felt different this week? What resistance came up? What surprised you? Don't edit yourself. Just write whatever comes. Day 8 through 14. Now we layer. You keep doing the morning assumption declaration every day, but each day add one new empowering action. Day 8. Smile at yourself in the mirror and say, I am worthy of wealth. Day 9. Research one investment topic for 15 minutes. Day 10. Compliment someone genuinely, practicing generosity. Day 11. Dress slightly better than usual, signaling to yourself that you matter. Day 12. Ask one person in your network about their career path, building relationship capital. Day 13. Say no to one expense that doesn't align with your values, exercising financial boundaries. Day 14. Celebrate one financial win from the past year, training your brain to notice success. Day 15 through 21. We go deeper. You're still doing the morning declaration. Now we add the evening review. Before bed, answer 3 questions. What did I do today that someone wealthy would do? What assumption did I strengthen today? What am I grateful for financially, even if it's small? This evening practice closes the loop. You're telling your subconscious that transformation is happening, that you're paying attention, that this matters. Day 15 specifically. Calculate your current net worth, all assets minus all debts. Write the number down. Don't judge it. This is your baseline. You'll measure from here. Day 16. Identify one skill you could develop that would increase your income. Don't learn it yet, just identify it. Acknowledge that you have agency in your earning potential. Day 17. Have one uncomfortable money conversation with a partner, a friend, a family member. Practice speaking about money without shame or secrecy. Day 18. Visualization practice. Close your eyes for 5 minutes. See yourself 1 year from now, financially transformed. What do you see? What do you feel? Let it be vivid. Day 19. Give something away. Money, time, expertise. Practice the energy of overflow, the belief that you have enough to share. Day 20. Read about one person who built wealth from nothing. Study their mindset. What assumptions did they hold? Day 21. Midpoint reflection. You're 3 weeks in. Journal on this. How is my relationship with money different than it was 21 days ago? What's easier now? What still feels hard? Day 22 through 30. The integration phase. By now, some of these practices have become habit. The morning declaration probably feels more natural. The language shifts are more automatic. Now we focus on resilience and sustainability, because the real test isn't starting. It's continuing when motivation fades. Day 22. Identify your biggest money trigger, the thing that sends you into scarcity panic. Write it down. Then write 3 empowering thoughts you can use when that trigger hits. Day 23. Role-play a raise conversation. Out loud by yourself. Practice asking for what you're worth. Get comfortable with the discomfort. Day 24. Audit your environment. What in your physical space reinforces scarcity? What could reinforce abundance? Make one small change. Day 25. Connection day. Reach out to someone in your field who's ahead of you. Ask one question. Build bridges to the future you want. Day 26. Financial education. Watch one video or read one article about investing, taxes, or wealth building. Knowledge reduces fear. Day 27. Energy check. How does your body feel when you think about money now versus day 1? Notice the shift. Celebrate it. Day 28. Commit to one thing. One financial behavior you'll continue beyond these 30 days. One non-negotiable practice. Day 29. Write a letter to your future wealthy self. Describe who they are, how they think, what they believe. Read it out loud. Day 30. Final reflection and commitment. Look back at your day 1 journal entry. See how far you've come. Then make a decision. Am I continuing this transformation or am I going back? Choose wisely, because you've invested 30 days. The worst thing you could do now is abandon the momentum you've built. This 30-day protocol is your foundation. It's designed to be manageable, to build slowly, to create sustainable change. But here's what's critical. You have to actually do it. Reading about transformation doesn't transform you. Listening to this audiobook doesn't transform you. Action transforms you. Consistent, daily, unglamorous action. That's the work. That's the price of change. And it's worth it. Now, let's talk about what happens after the 30 days. Because this is where most programs fail you. They give you a challenge, you complete it, you feel great, and then you drift back to old patterns because there's no structure for what comes next. So I'm going to give you that structure. I'm going to give you a relapse-proofing plan, a system to ensure that 6 months from now, a year from now, you're still embodying these new assumptions instead of reverting to the old ones. Relapse in belief work happens in predictable stages. First, you get busy or stressed, and you skip a practice or two. No big deal, you tell yourself. You'll get back to it tomorrow. But tomorrow you skip again. Then a week goes by, and suddenly you haven't done your morning declaration in 10 days. Then something goes wrong financially. An unexpected expense, a denied raise, a lost client. And in that moment of stress, your old assumptions come flooding back. You're bad with money. You'll never get ahead. This was all foolish optimism. And just like that, you're back where you started. Maybe not completely, but enough that the transformation stalls. This is normal. This is predictable. And this is preventable if you plan for it. Here's how. First, you need tripwires. These are predetermined moments when you check in with yourself and assess whether you're slipping. Set 3 tripwires. The first is time-based. Every Sunday evening, you do a 5-minute check-in. How many days this week did I do my assumption practice? What's one financial decision I made from abundance this week? What's one decision I made from scarcity? Just awareness. No judgment, just data. The second tripwire is emotion-based. Whenever you feel financial anxiety rising, you pause and ask, what assumption am I operating from right now? Name it, then consciously choose a different one. The third tripwire is event-based. Whenever you face a financial setback, you have a protocol. You give yourself 24 hours to feel the emotions. Then you activate your relapse prevention script. Your relapse prevention script is a document you create right now, while you're motivated, that you'll refer to later when you're not. In this document, you write the following. First, remind yourself why you started this work. What was painful about your old relationship with money? What do you want your new relationship to be? Second, list the evidence of progress you've made so far, even tiny wins. You'll need this list when your brain tries to tell you nothing's working. Third, write down your most powerful assumption, the one that feels most true and most transformative. This is your anchor. Fourth, describe one action you can take in the next 24 hours that aligns with your wealthy identity. Just one. Make it small and doable. This script is your emergency kit. When you're spiraling, you open it and follow the instructions you gave yourself when you were thinking clearly. Second, you need accountability, not the shame-based kind, the supportive kind. Find one person, just one, who knows about this transformation work you're doing. Someone who will check in with you monthly and ask, how's your assumption practice going? Have them ask that exact question. Not how's your money situation? Not have you made more money yet? How's your assumption practice going? Because the practice is what you control. The results will follow, but the practice is the work. If you don't have someone in your life who can do this, find an online community, hire a coach, or create a public commitment. Tell someone what you're doing. Accountability creates just enough pressure to keep you honest with yourself. Third, you need to build in flexibility without abandoning the foundation. Life happens. You'll have chaotic weeks where the full practice isn't possible. That's okay. The key is to identify your non-negotiables, the 1 or 2 practices that you'll do no matter what, even on the hardest days. For most people, this should be the morning assumption declaration and the language audit. These 2 things take almost no time and have disproportionate impact. Everything else can flex, but these 2 stay. Protecting your non-negotiables prevents total relapse. You might reduce the intensity of your practice during hard seasons, but you never go to zero. Fourth, you need to celebrate micro-wins obsessively. Your brain is wired to notice what's wrong and ignore what's right. You have to actively counter this. Keep a win journal. Every Sunday, write down 3 financial wins from the week. And I mean wins in the broadest sense. You didn't impulse buy something. That's a win. You had a money conversation without shutting down. That's a win. You checked your bank account without panicking. That's a win. You asked a question about a financial topic you didn't understand. That's a win. These tiny victories are evidence that you're changing. And evidence is what keeps your new assumptions alive when the old ones try to creep back. Fifth, and this is crucial, you need to pre-decide how you'll handle the inevitable fuck-up, because you will mess up. You'll make a terrible financial decision. You'll spend impulsively. You'll avoid something you should face. You'll act from scarcity in a big way. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. You can spiral into shame and self-judgment, which will trigger a full relapse. Or you can activate your pre-decided response, which is this. You acknowledge the mistake without drama. You say, I acted from my old assumption. That's information. What's my next move? And then you take one small action from your new assumption, immediately, same day. This is how you interrupt the shame spiral before it pulls you under. You don't let one mistake mean anything more than one mistake. You don't make it evidence that you're broken or that this work doesn't work. You just course correct and keep moving. Let me tell you about a man named Eric. Eric did this work. He transformed his assumptions. He started seeing real results. His income increased. His relationship with money got healthier. He was thriving. Then his car broke down. Major repair. Thousands of dollars he hadn't budgeted for. And in that moment, all his old panic came flooding back. He spiraled. He stopped doing his practices. He went back to avoiding his bank account. Within a month, he'd undone half the progress he'd made. When he came back to me, ashamed and defeated, I asked him what happened. He said he felt like the car breakdown proved he wasn't really changing, that money would always be a source of stress. I asked him if that thought was true. He paused. He realized it wasn't. The car breakdown was just a car breakdown. His interpretation of it, his assumption about what it meant, that's what triggered the relapse. We got him back on track by implementing the tripwire system, by creating his relapse prevention script, by rebuilding his practice one day at a time. And 6 months later, now let's go deeper into the advanced techniques I mentioned earlier, because these are the tools that take you from beginner to master level assumption work. These are practices that wealthy-minded people use, often unconsciously, to stay aligned with abundance even when circumstances challenge them. The first advanced technique is called assumption layering. This is where you don't just adopt one new belief about money. You build a full ecosystem of supporting beliefs that reinforce each other. Think of it like this. If your primary assumption is, I am wealthy, you need secondary assumptions that make that primary one believable. Secondary assumptions might include, I create value easily. Opportunities come to me naturally. I make good decisions with money. People want to pay me well. I'm always learning and improving. Each of these supports the main assumption. And when one assumption gets shaky, the others hold you steady. You build this by doing a belief mapping exercise. Write your primary assumption in the center of a page. Then branch out. What would I need to believe for that primary assumption to feel true? Write those beliefs around it. Then look at each secondary belief and ask the same question. Keep going until you have a web of interconnected assumptions. This becomes your belief system. And systems are more resilient than single beliefs. The second advanced technique is called assumption testing. This is where you deliberately put yourself in situations that challenge your new assumption and see if it holds. If you're building the assumption that you're confident asking for what you're worth, you test it by asking for a discount, a raise, better terms on a contract. If you're building the assumption that you make good financial decisions, you test it by researching and making a small investment. The testing serves two purposes. One, it gives you evidence. When the assumption holds and you get a good result, your belief strengthens. Two, it reveals weak points. If the assumption crumbles under pressure, you know you need to shore it up with more practice. Think of this like going to the gym. You don't build muscle by thinking about lifting weights. You build it by actually lifting weights, by putting your muscles under stress. Same with assumptions. You have to stress test them in real situations. The third advanced technique is called identity anchoring through storytelling. This is where you construct a narrative about yourself that reinforces your new identity. You literally tell yourself a story about who you are becoming, and you tell it so often that it becomes your self-concept. Here's how it works. You write a short story, maybe 500 words, about yourself as the protagonist who has successfully transformed their relationship with money. You write it in third person, like you're a character in a novel. You describe the challenges this character faced, the old beliefs they had to overcome, the practices they committed to, the person they became. You make it vivid. You make it compelling, and then you read the story regularly, weekly at first, then monthly. This story becomes a mirror. It shows you who you are becoming. It reminds you that you're the hero of your own narrative, not the victim. And narratives are powerful. They shape identity in ways that isolated affirmations never can. The fourth advanced technique is called financial identity exposure. This is where you deliberately put yourself in environments with people who have the financial reality you want. Not to compare yourself and feel inadequate. To normalize wealth. To see up close how people with money think, talk, act. You do this by joining professional organizations, attending conferences, taking courses, volunteering for boards, finding mentors. You surround yourself with people who assume wealth is normal, and slowly their assumptions become your assumptions through osmosis. This is why environment is so critical. You become like the people you spend time with. If all your friends are broke and complaining about money, that's the identity you'll reinforce. If you're regularly around people who are building wealth, who talk about investments and opportunities and growth, that becomes your normal. This doesn't mean you abandon your old friends. It means you expand your circle intentionally. The fifth advanced technique is called assumption journaling. This is different from regular journaling. Every evening, you write about one moment from the day where you acted from your new assumption and one moment where you acted from your old assumption. You describe what happened, what you were thinking, what you did, what the outcome was. Over time, you start to see patterns. You notice your triggers. You see your growth, and you build a record of transformation that you can look back on when you doubt whether this is working. The journal becomes evidence, proof that you're not the same person you were a month ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, and that evidence is rocket fuel for your belief. The sixth advanced technique is called pre-commitment architecture. This is where you set up your environment and systems to make wealth-building behavior automatic. You automate savings transfers so you don't have to decide to save every month. You set up automatic investment contributions. You create friction for spending by deleting shopping apps or removing saved credit cards. You make it easier to do the thing that aligns with your wealthy identity and harder to do the thing that doesn't. This is powerful because willpower is finite. You can't rely on making the right choice in every moment, but you can rely on systems that make the right choice the default choice. Wealthy people understand this. They don't trust their motivation. They trust their systems. Now let's talk about the people around you, because this is one of the most challenging aspects of transformation. When you change, the people in your life will react. Some will celebrate you. Some will feel threatened. Some will try to pull you back to who you used to be because your growth makes them uncomfortable. You need to be prepared for this. There are 3 types of people in your life right now: lifters, neutrals, and draggers. Lifters are people who support your growth. They encourage you. They celebrate your wins. They hold you accountable with love. They want you to succeed. Neutrals are people who don't really care about your financial transformation. They're not opposed to it, but they're not actively supporting it either. They're just there. And draggers are people who actively or passively discourage your growth. They make jokes about your new practices. They tempt you back into old spending patterns. They roll their eyes when you talk about your goals. They tell you you're changing in a bad way. Draggers aren't necessarily bad people. They're often people you love. But their discomfort with your change makes them dangerous to your transformation. Here's what you need to do. Identify who falls into each category. Be honest, then make strategic decisions. Spend more time with lifters. Protect your transformation by surrounding yourself with support. Maintain polite distance with draggers. You don't have to cut them off, but you do have to limit their influence. And be careful what you share with them. You don't owe anyone real-time updates on your transformation. You can keep this work private until you're solid in your new identity. Some people in your life don't have access to this information anymore. That's a healthy boundary. Let me tell you about a woman named Angela. Angela started doing this work, and she was so excited that she shared everything with her best friend, Tara. Tara had been Angela's friend for 20 years. But Tara was deep in financial struggle and wasn't interested in changing. When Angela started talking about new assumptions, new practices, new opportunities, Tara shut it down. She made jokes. She told Angela she was getting weird. She said money doesn't grow on trees, as if that settled it. Angela felt hurt. She felt misunderstood. And worst of all, she started doubting herself. Maybe Tara was right. Maybe she was being foolish. It took Angela a few weeks to realize that Tara's reaction was about Tara, not about Angela. Tara felt threatened. Angela's growth was an implicit challenge to Tara's choice to stay stuck. Once Angela understood this, she made a decision. She still loved Tara, but she stopped talking to Tara about money. She found other people to share that part of her life with, and she protected her transformation by not exposing it to someone who couldn't support it. 6 months later, Angela's income had doubled, and interestingly, Tara came to her asking for advice. Because results speak louder than words. Once Angela had undeniable proof that her new assumptions were working, even Tara couldn't deny it. This is the pattern you'll likely face. Initially, resistance. Later, curiosity. Eventually, respect or departure. Some people will come around once they see you're serious and successful. Others will fade from your life because you're no longer a match. Both outcomes are okay. You're not responsible for other people's discomfort with your growth. You're only responsible for protecting your transformation until it's strong enough to withstand criticism. Another critical aspect of this work is dealing with setbacks without letting them derail you. Because setbacks will come, financial setbacks specifically. You'll make a bad investment. You'll get turned down for a raise. You'll lose a client. You'll overspend. You'll face an unexpected expense. These things are inevitable. The question isn't whether they'll happen. The question is how you'll respond when they do. Here's the protocol for handling financial setbacks without abandoning your new assumptions. Step 1, feel the feeling. Give yourself permission to be disappointed, frustrated, angry, scared, whatever comes up. Set a timer for 20 minutes. Feel everything fully for those 20 minutes. Don't suppress it. Don't judge it. Just feel it. Step 2, separate the event from the meaning. The event is what happened. The meaning is the story you're telling yourself about what it means. The event is you got turned down for a raise. The meaning you might be adding is, you're not good enough. You'll never get ahead. This proves you're bad with money. Recognize that the meaning is optional. It's not fact. It's interpretation. And you get to choose a different interpretation. Step 3, ask the growth question. What can I learn from this? How can I use this information to make a better decision next time? This question shifts you from victim to student, from powerless to curious. Step 4, take one new action within 24 hours. Something small that aligns with your wealthy identity. Even if it's just updating your resume, researching one new opportunity, or having one conversation. The action reminds your brain that you're not giving up. You're adapting. Step 5, revisit your evidence list. Look at your win journal. Remind yourself of all the progress you've made. One setback doesn't erase all the growth. Keep perspective. This 5-step protocol is your circuit breaker. It stops the spiral before it starts. And if you use it consistently, setbacks become less destabilizing over time. You build resilience. You prove to yourself that you can handle difficulty without abandoning your new identity. That's power. Now let's talk about what happens when things actually start working. When the money starts coming. When opportunities open up. When your new assumptions begin manifesting tangible results. This should be the easy part, right? You got what you wanted. But for many people, this is where a different kind of crisis hits. The success crisis. Here's what happens. You've been working so hard to believe you're worthy of wealth. And then wealth starts arriving. And suddenly you feel like a fraud. You feel like you don't belong. You feel like someone's going to realize you're not actually qualified for this level of success and take it all away. This is imposter syndrome, and it's incredibly common among people who've experienced a rapid shift in financial reality. Your inner world hasn't caught up with your outer world yet. You're living in a bigger house or making more money or hanging out with more successful people. But inside you still feel like the broke person you used to be. If this happens to you, here's what you need to understand. This feeling is normal. This feeling is temporary. And this feeling is lying to you. You're not an imposter. You did the work. You changed your assumptions. You took new actions. You created these results. They're yours. You earned them. The discomfort you're feeling isn't evidence that you don't belong. It's evidence that you're growing. Anytime you step into a new identity, there's a period of awkwardness where the new version doesn't feel natural yet. That's not a problem. That's the process. The way through this is repetition and normalization. You keep showing up as the new version of yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. You keep making decisions from your wealthy identity even when your brain is screaming that you're pretending. And over time, the pretending becomes real. The identity solidifies. The discomfort fades. You look back and realize that person you were pretending to be, that's actually who you are now. The old identity was the pretense. This is your truth. One practice that helps enormously during this phase is updating your self-concept regularly. Every time you reach a new financial milestone, you take a moment to integrate it into your identity. You don't just celebrate externally, you celebrate internally. You tell yourself, I am someone who earned this. I am someone who has this. I am someone who can handle this level of success. You consciously update your self-image to match your new reality. This prevents the lag where your circumstances have changed, but your identity hasn't. The more quickly you can integrate new levels of success into your self-concept, the more stable your wealth becomes. Let me tell you about a man named James. James built a business that took off faster than he expected. Within 2 years, he went from barely paying his bills to making multiple 6 figures. By all external measures, he was successful. But internally, he was a mess. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd gotten lucky, that it would all disappear, that he didn't really deserve it. This anxiety made him miserable. He couldn't enjoy his success. He was constantly bracing for disaster. When he started working on his self-concept, when he started consciously integrating his new reality into his identity, everything shifted. He did daily practices where he affirmed, "I built this. I am capable of sustaining this. I deserve to enjoy this." He stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. He started living as someone for whom this level of success was normal. And ironically, once he relaxed into it, his business grew even more. Because he wasn't operating from fear anymore. He was operating from confidence. And confidence creates better results than fear ever could. This brings me to one of the most important concepts in the entire audiobook. The concept of financial identity congruence. This is the alignment between who you believe you are and the financial reality you're living. When there's congruence, life feels easy. Money flows. Decisions are clear. You're at peace. When there's incongruence, everything is a struggle. Either you're living below your identity and you feel frustrated and trapped, or you're living above your identity and you feel like an imposter waiting to be found out. The goal of all this work is to create and maintain congruence, to have your internal identity match your external reality at every stage of your financial journey. This means as you grow, your identity needs to grow with you. You can't just set it once and forget it. You have to keep updating, keep expanding, keep claiming new levels as yours. This is a lifelong practice. You never arrive at a final identity and stop. You're always becoming. And the becoming is the point. The transformation never ends. But it does get easier. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. The more you prove to yourself that you can handle new levels, the less scary growth becomes. Let me give you a visualization practice now that you can use to accelerate this integration process. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if that feels safe. Take 3 deep breaths. Now I want you to imagine your future self, not some abstract fantasy version. A real tangible version of you that exists 1 year from today. This version of you has fully integrated the wealthy identity. They don't question whether they deserve abundance. They just live it. See this future you waking up in the morning. What does their morning routine look like? Notice the calm confidence in their movements. They're not anxious about money. They're not avoiding anything. They're just present. Now watch future you going through their day. Notice how they make decisions. Notice how they interact with other people. Notice the opportunities they say yes to without hesitation. Notice the way they carry themselves. There's an ease to them, a groundedness. Now I want you to step into this future version of yourself. Actually imagine you are them. Feel what it feels like to be someone for whom wealth is normal, for whom financial abundance is just who they are. Feel the peace of it, the freedom, the power. Spend a moment here. Let this feeling settle into your body. And now bring that feeling back with you. Open your eyes. And here's the key. That future version, they're not separate from you. They're not someone you're trying to become. They're who you already are. You just haven't fully stepped into it yet. But they exist right now. And every day, every choice, you're either moving toward that version or away from it. Choose toward. All right. We're entering the final stretch of this journey together. We've covered the foundations. We've built new assumptions. We've learned practices and protocols. We've prepared for challenges and setbacks. Now I want to talk about maintenance and mastery. Because once you've done this work, once you've transformed your financial identity, the question becomes, how do you stay here? How do you make this permanent? The answer is that you don't let yourself forget. You don't take your new identity for granted. You protect it with structure, with ritual, with consistent practice. Here's what mastery looks like. You have a daily non-negotiable practice, even if it's just 5 minutes. You have a weekly review where you assess your financial decisions and mindset. You have a monthly reflection where you celebrate wins and recalibrate assumptions. You have a quarterly deep dive where you assess whether your actions and results are aligned with your goals. And you have an annual reset where you update your vision and recommit to the work. This structure keeps you honest. It prevents drift. It ensures that the person you've become doesn't slowly erode back into the person you were. Your daily practice might look like this. Morning assumption declaration. 3 deep breaths. 1 journaling prompt answered in 3 sentences. Evening gratitude for 1 financial moment from the day. That's it. 10 minutes total, but done every single day. This daily practice is your anchor. It reminds you who you are. It primes your brain for abundance. It keeps the flywheel turning. Your weekly review might look like this. Every Sunday, you spend 20 minutes asking yourself 4 questions. What financial decision this week am I proud of? What financial decision would I make differently? What new assumption am I working to integrate? What action will I take this coming week to strengthen my wealthy identity? You write down your answers. You notice patterns over time. You see your growth objectively. Your monthly reflection might look like this. First Sunday of every month, you look at your numbers. You check your net worth. You review your income and expenses. You assess progress toward your goals. But you don't just look at the numbers. You also assess your internal state. How do I feel about money right now? Where am I still operating from scarcity? Where have I grown into abundance? What do I need to focus on this month? This monthly check-in ensures you're not just chasing external results. You're also tending to the internal transformation. Your quarterly deep dive is where you get strategic. Every 3 months, you block out 2 hours. You assess the past quarter. You celebrate what worked. You troubleshoot what didn't. You adjust your goals if needed. You recommit to your practices. You identify one area of financial growth to focus on for the next quarter. Maybe it's increasing income. Maybe it's improving your investment knowledge. Maybe it's healing your relationship with spending. You pick one thing and you commit to progress in that area. Your annual reset is sacred. This is where you dream big again, where you look at who you've become over the past year and honor that transformation. And then you look forward. Where do I want to be a year from now? What assumptions do I need to hold to get there? What practices do I need to deepen? Who do I need to become? You write a new version of your identity story. You update your vision. You set new goals. And you step into the next year with clarity and intention. This structure might sound like a lot, but here's the truth. Wealthy people already do versions of this. They review their finances regularly. They reflect on their decisions. They adjust their strategies. They invest time in their financial health. What you're doing isn't extra. It's what successful people do. You're just doing it with more intention around the mindset component. And here's what happens when you commit to this level of consistency. Your transformation becomes irreversible, not because you can never slip back, but because you've built so much momentum, so much evidence, so much identity reinforcement that going back would feel wrong. It would feel like betraying yourself. You've become someone who assumes wealth, someone who expects abundance, someone who creates value and receives value in return. That's not a temporary state. That's who you are now. Let me tell you about a woman named Lisa. Lisa did this work 5 years ago. She transformed her assumptions. She changed her relationship with money. She increased her income significantly. She built wealth. But the most remarkable thing wasn't the money. It was that she sustained it. 5 years later, she's still doing a version of her daily practice. It's evolved. It's simpler now because the beliefs are more automatic. But she hasn't abandoned it. She told me once that the practice isn't about the money anymore. It's about staying connected to the person she worked so hard to become. It's about honoring the transformation. And because she's stayed consistent, her wealth has continued to grow. Not through hustle, through alignment. Through being someone for whom wealth is natural. This can be your story too. 5 years from now, you could be looking back at this moment as the turning point. The moment you decided to stop accepting financial limitation as your fate. The moment you claimed a new assumption and refused to let go of it. The moment you became someone different. But only if you commit. Only if you do the work. Only if you protect this transformation like your life depends on it. So let me ask you now, are you in? Are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to be uncomfortable while you grow? Are you willing to face the resistance, both internal and external, that comes with change? Are you willing to show up every day even when you don't feel like it? Even when you don't see immediate results? Even when your old identity tries to pull you back? Because that's what this requires. Not perfection, not some superhuman level of discipline. Just consistency, just commitment. Just the willingness to keep choosing your new assumption over your old one, day after day, until the new one is all that remains. If you're in, here's what you do next. You finish this audiobook. You let everything settle. And then you start day 1 tomorrow morning. You wake up and you say your assumption declaration out loud. You start the 30-day protocol. You commit to the daily practice. You begin, and you don't stop. Not in 30 days, not in 90 days, not in a year. You make this part of who you are. You make it as non-negotiable as brushing your teeth. And you watch what happens. What will happen is this. Slowly at first, then faster, your reality will shift. You'll notice opportunities you would have missed before. You'll make decisions that surprise you. You'll ask for things you never would have asked for. You'll invest in yourself in ways that feel risky, but turn out to be brilliant. You'll handle setbacks without spiraling. You'll celebrate wins without discounting them. And people around you will start to notice. They'll ask what's different about you. They'll sense a shift in your energy. And you won't quite know how to explain it because the transformation happens from the inside out. 6 months in, you'll look back and barely recognize who you were. The person who started this audiobook, the person who was stuck in scarcity thinking, the person who didn't believe they could change their financial reality, that person will feel like a stranger, not because you've become someone fake or inauthentic, but because you've shed a version of yourself that was never true. You've returned to who you actually are underneath all the conditioning and fear and limiting beliefs. You've come home to your abundant self. 1 year in, the external results will be undeniable. Maybe you've doubled your income. Maybe you've paid off significant debt. Maybe you've started a business or made your first investments. Maybe you've simply reached a place of peace with money where you're no longer constantly anxious. Whatever your specific results, they'll be proof. Proof that assumption shapes reality. Proof that belief alone can reshape wealth. Proof that you had this power all along, you just needed to activate it. And here's what's most beautiful about this transformation. It doesn't just change your bank account. It changes everything. Because when you prove to yourself that you can change one fundamental assumption and reshape your reality, you realize you can do that with anything. Your relationships, your health, your career, your entire life. The limitation was never out there. It was in here, in your beliefs, in your assumptions. And beliefs can be changed. This is why I call this work radical, because it puts all the power back in your hands. It doesn't promise you'll never face obstacles. It doesn't claim systemic barriers don't exist, but it does claim that you have agency, that you have choice, that you can decide what you believe about yourself and your potential, and that decision matters more than almost anything else. This is empowerment in its truest form, not the shallow kind that says you can have anything you want if you just visualize hard enough. The deep kind that says you can become anyone you decide to become, and that becoming will change what's possible for you. So let me leave you with this. You are not your circumstances. You are not your history. You are not your current bank balance. You are the consciousness observing all of that. And consciousness gets to choose. It gets to decide. It gets to assume. This entire audiobook has been building toward this one moment of choice. Right now, in this moment, you get to decide what you believe about yourself and money going forward. You can choose to keep your old assumption. It's familiar. It's safe. It requires no risk. But it also keeps you exactly where you are. Or you can choose a new assumption. One that feels uncomfortable and audacious and maybe even a little foolish, but one that opens a door to a completely different financial reality. I'm asking you to walk through that door. I'm asking you to assume wealth before it arrives. I'm asking you to believe in your financial success before you have proof. I'm asking you to act as if you're already the person who has what you want. I'm asking you to commit to this transformation with everything you have. And I'm promising you that if you do, if you really do, your life will never be the same. This is your moment. This is your turning point. Years from now, you'll look back at this day as the day everything changed. Not because something happened to you, but because you happened to yourself. You chose differently. You believed differently. You became differently. And that made all the difference. Welcome to your wealthy life. It's been waiting for you all along. You just needed to give yourself permission to claim it. That permission, you have it now. You've always had it. You just forgot. But now you remember. And now you begin. Go forward with confidence. Go forward with conviction. Go forward with the unshakable assumption that wealth is yours. Because it is. It always was. You just needed to believe it. And now you do. Now you do. Let me give you one final practice to cement everything we've covered. This is your integration ritual. You'll do this once, right after finishing this audiobook, to mark the transformation and lock it into your nervous system. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted for 20 minutes. Bring a journal and a pen. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes and take 5 deep, slow breaths. Now I want you to reflect on who you were when you started this audiobook. What did that person believe about money? What did they believe about themselves? What were their habits, their thoughts, their energy around wealth? Don't judge this past version. Just see them clearly. Acknowledge them. Thank them for surviving, for coping the best way they knew how. And then release them. Say goodbye. Out loud if possible. Say, thank you for protecting me, but I don't need you anymore. I'm choosing something different now. Open your eyes and write for 5 minutes without stopping. The prompt is this. I am someone who. Write about your new identity. Who are you now? What do you believe? What do you assume? What do you expect? Write it in present tense as if it's already completely true. Don't worry about eloquence. Just let it flow. This is your new identity declaration. When you finish writing, read it out loud. Let yourself hear your own voice claiming this new identity. Notice what emotions come up. Notice any resistance. Breathe through it. Read it again and again until it starts to feel less foreign, until it starts to feel possible, until it starts to feel true. Now write down 3 commitments. 3 non-negotiable practices you will do for the next 90 days minimum to reinforce this new identity. Make them specific and achievable, not vague aspirations like, be better with money. Concrete. Practices like, I will say my morning assumption declaration every single day. Like, I will check my bank account 3 times per week without judgment. Like, I will ask 1 question about money or investing per week to build my knowledge. Write these commitments. Sign them. Date them. This is your contract with yourself. Finally, place your hand over your heart. Take 3 more deep breaths and say this out loud. I am ready for wealth. I am worthy of wealth. I assume wealth is mine. I will not abandon this assumption no matter what challenges come. I commit to this transformation. I commit to becoming who I'm meant to be. And I trust that as I change, my reality will change with me. Say it like you mean it. Say it until you feel something shift inside you. That shift is the beginning. That shift is everything. Now you're done. The ritual is complete. The seed is planted. Your only job now is to water it daily through your practices, to protect it from the weeds of doubt, to give it time to grow, and to trust that beneath the surface, roots are forming that will eventually support a tree of wealth so strong that nothing can uproot it. Let me address some of the specific challenges you might face in the months ahead, because preparation is protection. First, you'll have doubt days. Days where you wake up and think this is all nonsense. Days where your old assumption feels more real than your new one. Days where you're tempted to quit. On those days, don't try to force belief. Just do the practice anyway. Action before motivation. Movement before meaning. Your feelings don't have to align with your behavior. You can doubt and do the practice simultaneously. The practice doesn't require your enthusiasm. It only requires your consistency. And here's what you'll find. When you do the practice despite the doubt weakens. Not always immediately, but over time. Action is the antidote to doubt. Second, you'll have comparison days. Days where you see someone else's success and feel like you're falling behind. Days where social media makes you feel inadequate. Days where it seems like everyone is doing better than you. On those days, practice radical refocusing. Close the apps. Stop consuming other people's highlight reels. Come back to your own journey. Ask yourself, am I further along than I was last month? Last year? If yes, you're winning. That's the only comparison that matters. Everyone else's path is irrelevant. Their timeline is not your timeline. Their advantages and disadvantages are not yours. Your only competition is yesterday's version of you. Beat that version. That's success. Third, you'll have urgency days. Days where you feel like this is taking too long. Days where you want the results now and you're frustrated they're not here yet. On those days, remember the tree. Remember that growth happens underground before it happens above ground. Impatience is the enemy of transformation. You cannot force the timeline. You can only stay consistent with the inputs and trust the outputs will come. Instead of focusing on how far you have to go, celebrate how far you've come. Measure progress in assumptions changed, in behaviors shifted, in moments where you chose differently. These are the real wins. The money is just the lagging indicator. Fourth, you'll have relational friction days. Days where someone in your life pushes back against your growth. Days where you feel misunderstood or unsupported. Days where you're tempted to shrink back to your old self to make others comfortable. On those days, practice fierce self-loyalty. You are not responsible for other people's comfort with your transformation. You are responsible for completing your own evolution. Protect your growth. Set boundaries. Limit what you share and with whom. Find your people, the ones who celebrate you, and lean into those relationships. Let the others fall away if they must. Not everyone is meant to come with you to your next level, and that's okay. You're not abandoning them. You're just choosing yourself. Finally, fifth, you'll have plateau days. Days where it feels like nothing is changing. Days where you're doing all the practices but seeing no movement. Days where you wonder if you've hit your ceiling. On those days, double down. Plateaus are not stopping points. They're integration periods. Your nervous system is adjusting to the new level. Your identity is solidifying. The external results are about to catch up, but there's a lag. This is when most people quit, right before the breakthrough. Don't be most people. Keep going. The plateau is the prelude to the leap. Trust the process even when you can't see the progress. Now let me give you some advanced troubleshooting for specific money mindset blocks you might encounter. These are the deep, stubborn beliefs that can persist even after you've done significant transformation work. We need to address them directly. Block 1. I don't deserve wealth. This belief usually has roots in worthiness issues that go deeper than money. Maybe you were taught that you're inherently flawed. Maybe you carry shame about something in your past. Maybe you've internalized the message that you're not good enough. Here's the reframe. Worth is not earned. Worth is inherent. You were born worthy. You will die worthy. Nothing you do or don't do changes that fundamental truth. But let's say you don't believe that yet. Let's approach it pragmatically. Wealth doesn't go to the most deserving people. It goes to the people who create value, who solve problems, who serve needs. Are you capable of creating value? Yes. Then you're capable of earning wealth. Deserving doesn't enter the equation. Shift from, do I deserve this, to can I create this? The answer is always yes. Block 2, money will change me for the worse. This fear is usually based on observing wealthy people you didn't like or being taught that money corrupts. Here's the truth, money amplifies. If you're generous now, wealth makes you more generous. If you're kind now, wealth gives you more capacity for kindness. If you're an asshole now, wealth makes you a bigger asshole. Money doesn't change character. It reveals it. So instead of fearing that wealth will change you, commit to becoming someone whose character you trust. Work on your values now. Become someone who would use wealth well. Then the fear dissolves because you know who you are. Block 3. If I have money, people will expect things from me. This is a boundary issue masquerading as a money issue. You're afraid of saying no. You're afraid of disappointing people. You're afraid of being used. So you keep yourself broke to avoid the discomfort of setting boundaries. Here's the brutal truth. You will need boundaries whether you have money or not. Broke people also get asked for things. Having money just means you need clearer boundaries, which is actually a gift. It forces you to develop a skill that will serve you in every area of life. So don't keep yourself small to avoid growing up. Learn boundaries. Practice saying no. Get comfortable with disappointing people who feel entitled to your resources. This is part of wealth maturity. Block 4. I'm afraid I'll lose it all. This fear is usually based on witnessing financial loss, either personally or in your family. Someone lost money, and you decided that wealth is inherently unstable. Here's the distinction. Luck is unstable. Wealth built on skill is stable. If you win the lottery, yes, you'll probably lose it because you didn't develop the skills to manage wealth. But if you build wealth through creating value, through learning, through growing your capacity, that wealth is sustainable. Because even if you lost it all tomorrow, you have the skills to rebuild. You're not afraid of losing money. You're afraid of losing money without the ability to get it back. So the solution isn't to avoid wealth. It's to build skills, financial education, value creation, resilience. Build those, and the fear fades. Block 5. Rich people are greedy, and I don't want to be like them. This is a categorization error. You're lumping all wealthy people into one category. These blocks are deep. They don't disappear with one affirmation. They require ongoing work, daily examination, constant reframing, but they can be overcome. I've seen it hundreds of times. The block that feels insurmountable today becomes a footnote in your transformation story a year from now. But only if you face it, only if you do the work, only if you refuse to let it stop you. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas had the I don't deserve it block. Deep, paralyzing, tied to childhood abuse that told him he was worthless. When money started coming to him, he'd find ways to lose it. Overspending, terrible investments, getting taken advantage of. Classic self-sabotage. For years, this pattern repeated. Make money, lose money, make money, lose money. He couldn't break it until he addressed the worthiness wound. He went to therapy. He did inner child work. He learned to separate his inherent worth from his past experiences. And slowly, painfully, he began to believe he deserved good things. Not because he'd earned them, but because all humans deserve good things. Once that belief solidified, his relationship with money stabilized. He stopped sabotaging. He started building. 5 years later, he has more wealth than he ever imagined possible. But the wealth wasn't the real transformation. The worthiness was. The money just followed. Your transformation might require similar depth. You might need to address wounds that have nothing to do with money on the surface, but everything to do with money underneath. This is hard work. This is facing the stuff you'd rather avoid. But it's necessary, because you can't build lasting wealth on a foundation of unworthiness, fear, or unhealed trauma. The foundation has to be solid, and that means going deep. Deeper than assumptions. Deeper than practices. down to the core beliefs about yourself and your place in the world. If this feels overwhelming, start small. Pick one block, just one. Spend the next month working on that specific belief. Journal about it. Meditate on it. Talk to a therapist about it. Read books that address it. Bring all your awareness to healing that one thing. And once you've made progress, move to the next block. This isn't a race. This is a lifelong practice of becoming who you're meant to be. Take your time. Do it right. Because wealth built on a shaky foundation will crumble. Wealth built on solid self-knowledge will last generations. Now let's talk about legacy. Because this transformation isn't just about you. It's about everyone who comes after you. When you break generational poverty patterns, when you shift from scarcity to abundance, you're not just changing your life. You're changing your family tree. Your children, if you have them, will grow up with a completely different money story than you did. They'll learn abundance as their default. They'll see you managing money with confidence and ease. They'll inherit assumptions that serve them instead of limit them. This is generational wealth in the truest sense. Not just money in a bank account, but a wealthy mindset passed down. And even if you don't have children, your transformation impacts your community. You become the example, the person who proves change is possible, the one who refused to accept financial limitation as fate. People will watch you. They'll ask questions. They'll see what's possible, and some of them will follow your lead. You'll create a ripple effect of abundance that extends far beyond your individual life. This is the real reason to do this work. Not just for your own comfort, though that matters, but for the impact, for the permission you give others to dream bigger, for the proof that change is possible. So when this gets hard, when you want to quit, when you're tired of doing the practices and seeing slow results, remember, this is bigger than you. This is about breaking cycles. This is about creating new patterns. This is about being the one in your lineage who said enough and chose differently. That's a sacred responsibility. That's a holy task. Don't abandon it when it gets uncomfortable. Honor it, protect it, complete it. Let me take you through one more grounding practice because we're nearing the end and I want to make sure you're fully present for the final integration. Wherever you are, bring your awareness to your body. Notice your feet on the ground or the surface supporting you. Feel the weight of your body being held. Notice your breath moving in and out without effort. Your body knows how to breathe without your conscious control. It knows how to digest food, heal wounds, grow cells. Your body is intelligent. Trust it. Now expand your awareness to the space around you. Notice sounds. Notice temperature. Notice light. You are here in this moment, in this body, in this life, and right now, in this moment, you are safe. You have everything you need to take the next step. You don't need to know how this all unfolds. You just need to take the next step. Trust the process. Trust yourself. And breathe. One more deep breath in. Hold it. Release it slowly. Good. You're ready for what comes next. The final piece I want to give you is a troubleshooting guide for maintaining transformation long-term. Because the work doesn't end when you finish this audiobook. It doesn't end when you complete the 30-day protocol. The work becomes your life. It becomes how you operate. And that requires systems to prevent backsliding. System 1, the morning prime. Every morning before you do anything else, you spend 3 minutes priming your mindset. Assumption declaration, 3 gratitude statements, 1 intention for the day. 3 minutes. This sets your energy. This reminds your brain who you are now. This prevents you from sleepwalking back into old patterns. System 2, the trigger response protocol. Identify your top 3 financial triggers. The things that send you into scarcity panic. Maybe it's checking your bank balance. Maybe it's hearing about someone else's success. Maybe it's an unexpected expense. For each trigger, write a response script. When this happens, I will think this, and then I will do this. Pre-deciding your response to triggers gives you a circuit breaker. You don't have to figure out what to do in the moment when you're panicking. You already know. You just execute the protocol. System 3, the weekly money date. Every week, same day, same time, you have a date with your money. You look at your accounts. You review transactions. You adjust your budget if needed. You celebrate wins. You troubleshoot challenges. This weekly practice normalizes money. It removes the fear and avoidance. It makes money management routine instead of dramatic. System 4, the quarterly identity update. Every 3 months, you revisit your identity statement, the one you wrote in your integration ritual. You read it. You assess, is this still true? Do I need to expand it? Have I outgrown it? You update it to match your current level. This keeps your self-concept aligned with your growth. You never let your identity lag behind your reality. System 5, the annual abundance audit. Once a year, you do a comprehensive review. You look at everywhere money has flowed to you in the past 12 months. Salary, gifts, refunds, found money, everything. You calculate the total. This number is often much higher than people expect because they only think about their salary. But wealth flows in many streams. Seeing the full picture rewrites your assumption about how much money actually comes to you. Then you look forward. What do you want the total to be next year? What assumptions do you need to hold to make that possible? You set intentions. You commit to the next level. These 5 systems, maintained consistently, create a fortress around your transformation. They make relapse nearly impossible, not because you'll never have hard days, but because you have structures in place that catch you before you fall too far. This is how you make transformation permanent, not through willpower, through systems. Now, one final story. A woman named Maria. Maria came to this work broke, scared, and convinced she'd always struggle. She had every reason to believe that. Single mother, minimum wage job, debt she couldn't see her way out of. But she did the work anyway. She adopted new assumptions. She practiced daily. She faced her blocks. She stayed consistent even when nothing seemed to change. 2 years later, she'd tripled her income. She'd paid off half her debt. She'd started an emergency fund. Her kids saw her confidence and started talking about their own futures differently. But here's what Maria said that struck me. The money is great, but the real transformation is that I'm not afraid anymore. I used to wake up every day terrified of the next financial disaster. Now I wake up knowing that whatever comes, I can handle it. That peace is worth more than any amount of money. That's what this work gives you. Not just money, peace, confidence, power, agency. The knowledge that you are capable of creating what you need. That you are resourceful. That you are enough. The money is evidence of that inner transformation. But the inner transformation is the real prize. So as we close this journey together, I want you to claim that prize. I want you to step fully into your power. I want you to stop waiting for permission from the world and give yourself permission. I want you to assume wealth with your whole being. Not tentatively, not half-heartedly, fully, completely, unapologetically, because you deserve it. Because you're capable of it. Because it's your birthright as a human being to live abundantly. Not to suffer, not to scrape by, to thrive. This is the last thing I'll say. You have everything you need already inside you. The wisdom, the strength, the creativity, the resilience. It's all there. It's always been there. This audiobook didn't give you anything you didn't already have. So assume it, starting right now. Starting with this breath, assume that money flows to you easily. Assume that you make good financial decisions. Assume that opportunities come to you naturally. Assume that wealth is your reality. And then act accordingly. Live accordingly. Choose accordingly. Be accordingly. Until the assumption becomes so deeply embedded in your identity that it's not an assumption anymore. It's just who you are. Welcome to your wealthy life. It's been waiting for you. And now finally you're ready to claim it. Go forward. Be brave. Trust yourself. And never ever forget, assumption is power. Use yours wisely. Use yours fully. Use yours now. Your transformation begins today. Your wealthy life begins today. Everything changes today because you decided it would. And that decision is everything. That decision is power. That decision is your birthright reclaimed. Go now. Begin now. Become now. You are ready. You have always been ready. And now you know it. That knowing changes everything. That knowing is wealth itself. Carry it with you. Protect it fiercely. And watch as it transforms everything it touches. This is your moment. This is your time. This is your life. Take it. Claim it. Become it. The wealthy you is not a future possibility. It's a present reality waiting to be embodied. Embody it now. Embody it fully. Embody it forever. And so it is. And so you are. And so it begins.